Beautiful. All right. Good evening. Welcome to the March 2024 Fresno County Bicycle Coalition Bike Cafe. And tonight we have the pleasure of hosting Mr. Martin Gasparian, who is an attorney who is going to talk to us about what to do in case of a crash. So we're as usual, going to keep it, fairly informal. So we'll have Mr. Gasparian's presentation first, but I'd like to maybe start off though with to give Martin a chance to introduce himself and tell us about why he's interested in this topic, and then maybe go ahead and launch into the presentation, and then we can, I don't know if, Martin, do you prefer to hold questions till the end? We can have people put questions in the chat, and then we could kind of run through questions like that. That give you a chance to get through your presentation, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine, Tony.
Okay, great. So go ahead, Martin. Tell us about you and your law firm, and how it relates to bicycle, crashes, and tell us a little bit about yourself, and
sure.
Look forward to hearing about you.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for providing me with this forum to discuss legal protections for bicyclists in Fresno County and in the Valley overall. I started practicing in primarily the Valley area in 2014, handling exclusively personal injury cases, predominantly car accidents, bike accidents, pedestrian accidents, truck accidents, and have been practicing since then. We started off with an office in Fresno and have now grown and have offices throughout the Valley, including in Tulare County, Kings County, Madera, San Joaquin, Stanislaus, Kern, and we feel like providing people with knowledge regarding their rights, whether they're pedestrians, bicyclists, driving a vehicle, will help in preventing bike accidents. Providing awareness to the public will help in preventing bike accidents, because annually, I think, as we'll go through the presentation, we see, at least in Fresno County, at least once a week, a substantial serious injury type accident is recorded in the data. So once a week, there is a bicyclist that is severely, seriously injured in Fresno County from the data that we've pulled, and that's one too many bicyclists being hurt. If you leave it up to me. So I just want to go through some of the legal protections and see if you guys have any questions towards the end. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll go through an FAQ session as well. With that being said, legal protections for cyclists in Fresno, importance of legal protections. As we all know, cyclists are some of the most vulnerable members on the road. As I mentioned to everyone previously, about 63 bike accidents result in serious injury per year in Fresno. We pulled this data from the Transportation Injury Mapping System. That averages about to more than one serious injury accident a week. Everyone on this forum knows someone who's had a serious injury or lost a family member, friend, a loved one in a bike accident. Legal protections help us ensure the safety of all cyclists and hold people accountable when accidents do happen. So what are some of these bike laws that provide us with protection? We actually, under the California Vehicle Code, have the same rights to the road as drivers do. We have the same responsibilities as drivers under the California Vehicle Code, just as we are under the Vehicle Code obligated to stop at stop signs and at red lights as drivers. We also have the same rights as drivers for that road. So the California Vehicle Code applies to us equally. Rules regarding bicycle lanes. As you know, cars are not permitted to drive in bike lanes, even though we see that happen on a day-to-day basis. There are three primary exceptions where cars are able to enter into bike lanes. One is if it's necessary for them to park in a parking space that's permitted. Two is if they're entering or leaving a roadway. And three is for a turn from an intersection, but they must be less than 250 feet from that turn. So they can't be riding in the bike lane for a mile and then go ahead and make that turn on their intersection. In 2023, new laws were passed protecting cyclists. One was the safe passing distance requirement. Previously, there was a requirement that there needed to be at least 3 feet space given between motorists and bicyclists before overtaking bicyclists. Now, motorists are obligated to change lanes to overtake bicyclists. If there is no lane change, then they need to wait until it is safe for them to overtake the bicyclists. So in addition to the distance of 3 feet that's written into the law, there was this new requirement of them having to change lanes, with the thought being that if there is a greater distance between the motorist and the bicyclist, then the chances of an accident happening are less likely. The second major law that was passed last year that affected bicyclists is that e-bikes are now allowed to utilize bike lanes as well. And so e-bikes have the same rights as bicyclists to utilize the bike lanes. And the third one, which helps with protecting cyclists, that was passed into law, is if there is a pedestrian green mark at a light now, same right as a pedestrian, bicyclists now are allowed to cross that intersection or cross that street, even if the light is red. Previously, if the light was red, but there was a pedestrian marker with a green, bicyclists were not able to cross the street, but now they are able to utilize the green pedestrian mark to go ahead and cross safely. So some of the rights that I thought cyclists would like to know or be aware of is right to use the road and occupy a full lane when necessary for safety. So we're allowed to ride in the lane of traffic if we're going at the same speed as other cars. We're allowed to occupy a full lane if we're going at the same speed as other cars. We're also allowed to take the lane. And what I mean by that is you're allowed to take the lane in 3 different primary scenarios. One is to pass other bicyclists. 2 is if we're preparing for a left turn. And 3 is to avoid any sort of unsafe conditions on the right side of the road. So taking the lane by cyclists is perfectly legal. Riding or occupying a full lane is also perfectly legal, so long as we're riding at the same speed as the traffic.
I'm sorry.
And so we have rights as well to seek legal recourse in case of accidents or injuries caused by the negligence or misconduct of others. When a cyclist is injured due to somebody else's fault, California laws protect them from having to pay for the cost of their recovery. And so what does that entail? You are entitled to, in a bike accident claim, you are entitled to both economic damages and non-economic damages. What does economic damages mean? It means that the at-fault party or the at-fault party's carrier is obligated to pay for any time you miss from work, both past and future. They're also obligated to pay for loss of earning capacity. And what I mean by that is if you're no longer able to do the job that you were able to do prior to the accident and need to take a lesser paying job, they're obligated to pay for that difference in your salary that you were earning prior to the accident. They are obligated to pay for both past and future medical expenses. So your cost of future recovery is included, and obviously also any property damage to your bike or to your any property that you had on you at the time of the accident. The bigger component here is the non-economic damages, and people utilize the term pain and suffering for non-economic damages. What does pain and suffering non-economic damages include? It includes, for us, it would be the inability to enjoy cycling. I know that's a huge part of everyone's lives in this club, in this community. So loss of enjoyment of life, not being able to cycle, any sort of permanent disability you have as a result of the accident, any sort of permanent scarring, disfigurement, would all be included in the non-economic damages component, pain and suffering component. Your diminished quality of life would also be included. If you are now in chronic pain as a result of the accident, your day-to-day living quality of life has gone down. You are entitled to non-economic damages for the loss or the diminished quality of life that you now have as a result of the accident. So in any bike accident claim, the damages that you are entitled to include both economic and non-economic, and typically people have difficulty putting a value to the non-economic damages. They always ask me, well, how do you calculate what pain and suffering is? And so although there is no hard set number to calculate what pain and suffering is for each person, we try to come up with a number that we think is fair, because at the end of the day, in our civil system, the only way we're able to correct a wrong or punish the at-fault party is by providing an award for damages. They don't. So what are the do's and don'ts after an accident? Do call 911 and get a police report. You'll be surprised how many times I hear bicyclists tell us that the other driver ran the red light and admitted to being at fault, but then there was no 911 call, there was no police report, and all of a sudden the driver's story changed, stating that they had the green light and the bicyclist was the one who ran the red light. Do take pictures, especially of the way the vehicle is positioned at the time of impact. If you're able to take pictures of the street, your injuries, to get information from witnesses, look around to see if there are any cameras. If you are injured, please do go to the ER. I know people think it's a hassle in terms of taking the paramedics or the ambulance to the ER, but do go get checked out, and do follow your doctor's recommended treatment plan. Some of the don'ts that we wanted to go over are don't comment on your injuries at the accident scene. A lot of times what happens is we see people who are running on adrenaline. This is the first time they've experienced something traumatic like this happen to them. And so they say, oh, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. and then 2 or 3 days later, they're having extreme difficulty getting out of bed. And so when you stay at the scene, I'm fine, the police officer jots that down as no injuries. Cyclist is saying that he or she is fine. So please don't comment on your injuries at the accident scene. Don't throw out evidence like clothes, helmet, your bike, and don't miss doctor's visits, because a lot of times that will be utilized against you. It's very easy for the adjusters to state that, well, if such and such person was injured, why did they miss so many doctor's appointments, or why didn't they follow what the treatment plan was? I understand everyone has their day-to-day work life, family life that they need to attend to, but at the same time, your health is also important. Don't put something off by saying, oh, I'll try to self-treat or get better. And then 6, 7 months down the line, you're still feeling the same ache, same pain, and you haven't received any treatment for that injury. And then you don't have an obligation to discuss anything with the driver's insurance adjuster. A lot of times they'll request for you to provide a recorded statement. The only point in taking that statement is try to frame questions in a way that they receive responses where they may minimize your injuries or try to place you at fault for the accident. So you don't have a duty to speak with the driver's adjuster, and we highly recommend that you don't provide a recorded statement to the driver's insurance company. Some of the legal questions, common legal questions that come up in bike accident claims that we get calls on are, what are the statute of limitations for bike accident claims? In the state of California, it's 2 years from the date of the incident to be able to file a personal injury claim. Unless you're a minor, then you have 2 years after the age of turning 18. What happens if I wasn't wearing a helmet at the time of the accident? The law doesn't require someone over the age of 18 to wear a helmet. We obviously recommend everybody wear a helmet. However, we also understand that life circumstances, you might be running out in a rush, forget to wear a helmet, something happens. It's not illegal to ride without wearing a helmet, although for sure the insurance company's adjuster will comment on it, stating that the injuries wouldn't have been as serious or wouldn't have been there if such person was wearing a helmet. So given that the state of California is a comparative fault state, and what I mean by that is even if the driver is only 10% at fault for the accident, they're still obligated to pay for 10% of economic and non-economic damages. It's not a whole all who's at fault. So fault is split between two parties. That's fine. If it's 50-50, you're still able to obtain 50% of the damages and 50% of the non-economic damages and pain and suffering. What happens in hit and run situations? Please call police immediately. Please try to get the license plate info of the hit and run driver. Try to find a witness if they saw the hit and run, and get a police report done. If you are involved in a hit and run situation, please. There may be other avenues that you might be able to pursue that I'm happy to discuss offline. What happens if you're attacked or bit by a dog while riding a bike? So almost all of our homeowners policies provide coverage for dog bite attacks. We're seeing some carriers now exclude for those animals or those dogs that have known vicious propensities, is how they try to state it. So pit bulls are being excluded from coverage, for example. But your homeowner's policy for the dog owner will provide coverage if you are attacked by a dog while riding your bike. California is a strict liability state when it comes to dog bites, and what I mean by that is um, the victim of a dog bite does not need to prove that the other party was at fault. The dog owner is always at fault and is responsible for their pet in the state of California. What documentation do I need in order to file a claim? Um, any medical expenses that you've incurred, any out-of-pocket expenses that you've incurred, any pictures that you have of your injuries, of your bike from the scene of the accident, any witness info, copy of the traffic collision report. All those documentations are helpful in filing the claim. One of the questions that we also get is, can I file a claim on my own? Absolutely, you can file a claim on your own, and everyone can go ahead and do this on their own. But what we see is, on average, 90 to 95% of claims are attorney represented. The reason being is insurance companies have done studies on this, and on average, the settlement value that is paid out on those claims that have legal representation is about 3.5 times greater than those that don't have legal representation. So it's not that no one can file a claim on their own or receive a settlement on their own, but will they receive a fair settlement? That's a different question. What if a family member loses their life in a bike accident? We have seen situations like that happen. The family members are entitled to a wrongful death claim in that scenario. And so the family members have each of them would have their own right to pursue a wrongful death claim against the alpha driver when it comes to the loss of a loved one in a bike accident. How much is a bike accident claim worth? There are several factors into consideration when coming up with what a claim is worth. A couple of the main ones are obviously the nature and severity of your injuries, the cost of your medical bills, medical treatment, anytime you've missed from work, and what the future entails in terms of what additional medical treatment you will need, how much additional time you'll have to miss in the future from work for your recovery. People also call us saying that the police report placed me at fault in my bike accident. You are still able to file a claim. We have been successful on almost all of our, I'm proud to say, on almost any police report that placed a bicyclist at fault in a traffic collision report. One thing to consider is that the traffic collision report is not admissible evidence in court. The police officer comes after the fact to the scene of the accident and records what is said or jots down what is said. The police officer is not an accident reconstructionist. And for me personally, on any collision, I always say it takes two to tango. So there is some fault that can be attributed to either party. It's not fully one all or none. So even if the police report places you at fault for a collision, let's say you're driving on the opposite side of the road. We've had many cases like that, or city of Fresno or doesn't allow in the business district to drive on the sidewalk. You're riding your bike on the sidewalk. It's still there are still ways to frame. We understand cyclists and we understand where they're coming from, so we understand how to frame their legal positions where they're able to obtain a recovery for their injuries. So even if the traffic collision places you at fault, we're happy to review the report with you and see what we could do to help you out. If, as stated previously, if you're partially responsible for the accident, or if, for example, you weren't wearing a helmet, you didn't have your lights on, or you're riding on the wrong side of the road, that doesn't mean that you're not entitled to recovery. As stated previously, California is a comparative fault state, so you are still entitled to recovery by all means. Don't think that you don't have a viable claim because you didn't have your lights on or you weren't wearing your helmet. And then lastly, one question that we also get is, I didn't actually hit the car, but the car caused me to fall and injure myself. We didn't actually collide. Am I able to pursue a claim? Yes, you are, so long as we're able to prove that the car forced you to take the evasive measures, and if it wasn't for the vehicle's actions, then you would have been fine. You would have not needed to have taken those evasive measures, which caused you your injuries. So with that, I just wanted to open up to the forum and see if anybody had any questions that I'd be happy to answer.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Martin. That was very informative. We could start. There's a number of questions in the chat there that I can read for you if you can probably look at them as well. So, but I'll go ahead and read them for you, and then you can have a moment to respond to them there. So if cyclists are allowed to cross the intersection with a ped walk signal now, one of the things that wasn't clear to me is the crosswalk defined as part of the intersection, or is the cyclist expected to avoid the crosswalk? So what's the definition of an intersection, I guess, for purposes of that?
So yeah, Tony. So for example, if the intersection light is red, but on the bottom you have a green pedestrian light on. Previously, you needed to follow the red light and you weren't allowed to cross. Only pedestrians were allowed to cross that intersection. Now, in addition to pedestrians, cyclists are allowed to use that green pedestrian walk to be able to cross the intersection.
But where in the intersection is my question?
In the intersection, so long as obviously pedestrian, you need to be on the lookout for pedestrians, is what the vehicle code states.
So my question is it legal to ride in the crosswalk in that situation, or do you have to ride in the street part of the intersection? That was kind of the splitting the hair on the distinction between the travel lanes of the intersection as opposed to the crosswalk, which is part of the pedestrian extension of the sidewalk. Usually is considered a pedestrian domain there, but a lot of time we see frequently see people riding in sidewalks, so that's always a kind of an issue. Are you does this law change anything as far as sidewalk riding, I guess is my question.
I'm trying to pull up the language from the bill. It's often said for people on bikes to cross during the pedestrian walk. So it says bikes can cross on walk signals. It's safer for people on bikes to cross an intersection during a pedestrian walk signal if that phase differs from the green light for cars.
Yeah, so it's kind of vague and unclear.
Yeah, Tony, the law does not address your question.
Yeah, that's what.
Tony, the law does not address your question.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tony, I would assume that it's still in the roadway, since that's like the natural course for the bicycle to be following along. So they would not be using an extension of the sidewalk. So they would not be veering into the crosswalk itself in order to cross the street. They would just be crossing along with the normal roadway that they were previously using.
Right. Yeah. So that's the point I wanted to make to our audience here is that it kind of sounds like maybe it would be, but in actual fact, it's probably safer not to ride in the crosswalk.
Right. So they wouldn't change into the crosswalk. They would just continue along the same street that they were using.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you, Martin and Lindsay and Nick, for a group question there. So, and let's see. So we had a comment there. Hi, Louise. So hi, Louise. Everybody, say hi to Louise there. And then Claudia asks on slide 7. I wonder if I missed bullet 2. So maybe go back to slide 7 and highlight bullet 2 there. Oh, yeah, that was a good question. Right to protection from harassment or aggressive behavior for motorists. So, Claudia, can you clarify what if you had a question about that? Or
Sure. What happened was there was a little sound that interrupted him when he was speaking, and he went from 1 to 3. And I was wondering if he could address number 2.
Yeah, so cyclists have, so if a driver is harassing you or shows aggressive behavior towards you and follows you to fall off your bike, Claudia, then you do have a right to pursue a claim against that aggressive driver. It's the aggressive driver's actions which cause you to get injured or fall off your bike.
Great, thank you.
so you have to be injured. You can't just be harassed. There has to actually be an injury. And Mark asks, what questions do you legally have to answer between parties at a collision? Not talking about questions from police. So, and then Janet responded, "Thank you, Janet. Exchange personal and insurance information." So, anything else besides that, or is that's it?
That is correct. That is correct. What Janet mentioned is your ID, your California ID, or your driver's license, and if you have insurance information under the California Vehicle Code. Those are the 2 main items that need to be exchanged.
All right. And then Mark has a second question. Do you recommend continuously recording camera on your bicycle to record events? So
Absolutely. A GoPro type camera recorder, it has changed. So, and these days you could get one on the very cheap as well. They're not too expensive. We absolutely recommend, all of our cyclists to have one of those recorders.
So that's considered admissible evidence.
It is.
Great.
It is. It is your recording. You establish foundation that it is your recording, and it is admissible evidence.
Awesome. Okay, good. We'll have to take a poll on how many people you record their rides here. So if at some point, maybe if we have time later there. So and let's see. Okay, then comment about don't ride in the crosswalk. So and then Mark says comment, get the circumstances, get the details from the other driver. Years ago, a car backed out to me when I was writing to a final exam in college. I had to get to the exam, but got the details of the driver. When I talked to the driver later in the day, she denied ever being in an accident. However, I told her that I had her insurance number, which would not have happened if the accident did not happen. Good job. So, and then 360-degree cameras recommended. If you have one, I don't know if we could talk about that. Let's see. Janet says, however, if it is proven the harassment caused the accident, insurance will deny the claim as an intentional act. You would have to go after them personally. So, any
that is correct, and that Janet mentions a good point there. It is a fine line. Insurance policies only cover accidents. So if this driver intentionally hits the pedal to the metal or floors the gas next to you for you to intentionally fall off, carriers will not provide coverage in that scenario, and you would need to go after the driver personally.
Okay. And then Louise, what if an injury is not caused by another motorist, but by road conditions, potholes, signs, equipment in the bike lanes?
That's a great question, Luis. And given the amount of rain that we've received over the past 2 seasons, we've seen a lot more pothole issues come up on our roadways. You can file claims against public entities, and public entities are responsible to keep our roadways safe. Those are different types of claims. You do have only 6 months from the date of the incident to file a claim against a public entity. So if you are injured due to a pothole, you would need to move fairly quickly in terms of reporting it to the governing entity that's responsible. I believe the sidewalks in Fresno, the city is responsible for, and I believe the roads are as well.
So great. I think that's kind of the most of the questions, other than the one that Louise asked if anyone had would like to share about a collision that they had. If anybody want to raise their hand if they have an experience that they'd like to share with the group there. I can see anybody with a hand up there. If anybody, I'm not seeing anybody with a hand up. That anybody been in a crash here? Let's see. Nobody has been in a crash.
Yeah.
Oh, John, I see John has a hand up. Okay, John.
And there was a stupid one. I was riding on the wrong side of the road and a truck came out of an alley and just kind of bumped me. I didn't go down, but it ruined my rim and I didn't get any information. I thought it was my fault and I was very apologetic, but now it's probably 3 years later and I still feel it in my hip where I got bumped. So dumb on my fault. I wish we had done this 3 years ago. But yeah, no major injuries, but still feel a little sore in the hip when I ride long distances.
So sorry to hear that, John. Let's see. Nobody else has crashed?
Well, what's great about this group is, and I've met Janet before. Janet works as an adjuster for one of the major carriers. So if you have any questions, you're always able to talk to Janet as well.
Well, that's great to have Janet around here. So let's see. Okay, Claudia says she's had a couple, but she doesn't want to talk about it. Or Claudia, if you don't want to talk about it, that's understandable. So feel free to chime in if you have any comments about anything that be worthwhile for others to learn from there. So I did want to share an additional resource that is available from Cal Bike that might be worthwhile to kind of keep a copy of in your pocket, printed out. But they actually have a thing they call the crash card that you can put in your wallet, and which may be a good thing when you're kind of feeling or panicky and that sort of thing. So but it sounded like some of the same things that Martin shared with us as well. So if you think you might need a reminder that to kind of go through and keep records and that sort of thing. So they had some suggestions there as far as doing a crash report and not talking to insurance companies and that sort of thing. And do not post on crash on social media, which I'm sure Martin would agree with as about a bad thing there in this day and age. So so they had some ideas that you can kind of keep in mind there. So anyway, so thank you, Martin, for all this great advice there. And I know Dennis, we've talked a little bit about you know, the crash things. Fresno, I want to thank Fresno Cycling Club and Dennis for joining this conversation, and also providing resource that they post legal resources on their website, which we had. I actually noticed that somehow it kind of got dropped there for a while. So Dennis, is it back up there? We had try to make sure that the resource was available.
Yeah, I think William got it back up.
So in addition to Mr. Gasparian, there's other attorneys that I have offered services, but I want to thank Martin for you know, kind of stepping up and taking this on behalf of a cyclist, because like I say, we suffer from lack of advocacy and representation in these situations. So it's much appreciated there. So I also want to thank Louise for joining us from afar there. We got I think I saw John Sonatl there from our distant Zoomers, and Louise was a former FCBC board member who now lives in Southern California. So hopefully haven't seen too many bike crashes down in Southern California. More traffic there.
Tony, did you see Janet's question?
No, I did not. Let me see. Janet. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, Janet. I just thank you for the prompt there. Go ahead, Janet.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay, you might hear the birds in the background too. I apologize. Okay, so there are several different ways you can insure you and insure your bike, and most people already have it and don't know it. One thing, if you're involved in a crash with another vehicle and your bike is damaged, you know, our bikes are expensive. You know, they're a part of us. They're expensive. But the other insurance carrier, let's say they accept liability, is only going to pay you the actual cash value. So your 2020 bike, they're going to pay what a 2020 bike is worth on the Bicycle Blue Book. Okay. If you have homeowners insurance and you have replacement costs, which most people do, your bicycle is covered for replacement cost on your own homeowners insurance. You can present a claim there. They may take your deductible, but if the other insurance company has accepted liability, they may waive the deductible, or when they get reimbursed back, you're going to get your deductible back. But that is the best way to go about getting your bike replaced. The other thing you can do is what my husband and I do. Our bikes are covered separately on a rider on our homeowners insurance. So not only is it covered for a crash or theft, because that's really the only two ways a bike is going to be covered, is if it's involved in the crash with a vehicle, not with another cyclist, only with a vehicle, and if it's stolen. Okay. There might be some other types of coverage, but those are the main ones. But there's other ways your bike can be damaged. So if you have the rider, the personal articles rider, and have your bikes listed on that, it's covered for everything. So that's one way to get your bike covered. Now, as far as injuries, let's say like he brought up the hit and run driver. They don't know who the hit and run driver is, but you have auto insurance with uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. you actually have a recourse there. And Martin, he said he'd bring that, but that's one thing that you do have. If you have auto insurance coverage, you usually have uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage for that. And it may not cover, some insurance carriers cover the medical payments under the auto, some don't. It just depends on how they describe a pedestrian, because you as a pedestrian are covered. So if you're hit walking, you're covered under your auto med pay. Some delete, take away the bicycle and say that they're not considered a pedestrian, but that's only on the med pay. They cannot change the wording on uninsured and underinsured motorists. So, any questions on insurance? Anything confusing?
Yeah, and you could, just to follow up, piggyback off of what Janet said, is if the other driver's insurance is, let's say, the state minimum, which more than 50% of the drivers in the state of California carry, and that's at $15,000. And let's say you have medical bills that are in excess of $30,000, you can pursue your own auto insurance under your underinsurance motorist coverage. And if you don't have what we call UM or UIM coverage, it's a very minimal addition on your premium payments. We highly recommend everyone to check their policies and get underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage if you don't have it, because you just don't know when the situation is going to arise and what sort of coverage the other driver has. So in order to protect yourself, we highly recommend everyone to take a look at their policies and get
Here's what I found.
coverage.
We had, oh, I had a, who was it? Somebody made a comment. So great. Well, that's yeah, there's a lot to know here. Well, thank you for the sharing of this expertise there, and I hope we don't have to worry about it, but it's good to know to check your insurance and find out, answer these questions. So that those are things we who are not in the business don't think about. But that's great to be able to be forewarned here. So, any other comments or questions?
Yeah. What if it is another cyclist that actually makes a calculation in a really bad error and you get harmed by that? Would you have to go after him personally, Martin?
It would be their own personal negligent act. I would need to take a look, depending on the carrier. Their homeowner's insurance may again provide coverage for their negligence.
I see.
Yes, homeowners or renters insurance, that's personal negligence coverage.
Thanks.
Okay.
So hearing no other comments, I'm going to stop the recording here in a second. Just before I do, I want to encourage everybody to visit fresnobike.org for future events and to register as a member of the coalition. We really enjoy bringing these kinds of speakers to Bike Cafe. We also have upcoming bike rides. Claudia here on the call is leading a bike ride on the 4th of May to a farmer's market. We have upcoming rides to the river. So check out the website for details and be sure to join the coalition. I'm going to stop the recording.